The world stands at a precipice, teetering on the edge of a new and uncertain chapter in global history. Never before has the international community faced such a sudden and dramatic shift in the rules that govern trade, diplomacy, and alliances. On October 14, 2025, a declaration from Washington sent shockwaves across every continent, reverberating through financial markets and government halls alike. This announcement threatens to redraw the map of global trade and alliances, upending decades of established relationships and economic norms. Former President Donald Trump, returning to the world stage, has issued a stark ultimatum. Any nation aligning with the rapidly expanding BRICS bloc will face a sweeping 10% tariff on all goods exported to the United States. This is not just a policy, it is a warning shot, a line drawn in the sand that could reshape the global order. This is not a negotiation tactic, it's a no-exceptions policy, forcing nations to make a difficult, perhaps irreversible choice. Governments everywhere are scrambling to assess the risks and rewards, weighing their economic futures against political loyalties and historical ties. The era of diplomatic ambiguity is over, replaced by a stark economic binary. Countries can no longer hedge their bets or play both sides. The world is being divided into clear camps, with little room for neutrality or compromise. So far, only the United Kingdom and Vietnam have managed to secure comprehensive trade deals that fully satisfy Washington's stringent requirements, positioning themselves as rare exceptions in an increasingly polarized landscape. The United States has also reached a partial agreement with China, but tensions remain high, and the future of this fragile understanding is far from certain. Meanwhile, talks with the European Union and Japan remain deadlocked, with both sides unwilling to yield ground. The prospect of a wider trade war looms, threatening to disrupt supply chains and unsettle economies worldwide. The world is being forced to choose sides, and the clock is ticking loudly for everyone involved. Every moment of indecision brings new risks, as alliances fracture and new blocs emerge. Across the globe, people watch with bated breath, aware that the decisions made in the coming days will shape the future of nations, economies, and generations to come. The stakes have never been higher. This ultimatum is the culmination of a trade philosophy Donald Trump has championed for years. From the campaign trail to the Oval Office, Trump has consistently argued that America is losing out in the global marketplace, and that bold action is needed to restore the nation's economic strength. His first term was defined by tariffs as a primary tool of foreign policy, rooted in the belief that America has been exploited by unfair trade practices. Trump's administration imposed sweeping tariffs on steel, aluminum, and a wide range of goods, targeting countries like China, Mexico, and even close allies in Europe and Asia. The America First policy aims to make imported goods more expensive, incentivizing Americans to buy domestic products and rebuild the nation's industrial base. Supporters argue that these measures protect American jobs, revive struggling industries, and encourage companies to invest in U.S. manufacturing rather than outsourcing production overseas. Tariffs are framed as a corrective measure to rebalance a global trade system seen as biased against the U.S. The administration claims that decades of lopsided agreements have left American workers behind, and that tough action is necessary to level the playing field. But this policy is also a lever to pressure allies and adversaries, forcing them to negotiate on Washington's terms. Tariffs become bargaining chips, used to extract concessions on everything from intellectual property to market access. Traditional U.S. allies, long used to partnership, now find themselves targeted with the same punitive measures as rivals. This shift has upended decades of diplomatic norms, leaving many partners feeling blindsided and uncertain about the future of their relationship with Washington. These one-sided deals, often presented under threat of penalties, have strained relationships and forced allies to question what it means to be an American partner in the 21st century. As the world adapts to this new reality, the long-term impact of Trump's tariff doctrine continues to reverberate across global markets and diplomatic circles. In direct opposition to the long-standing American-centric vision that has shaped global politics for decades, the BRICS alliance, now expanded beyond its original 5 members to include new, influential economies, champions a radically different future for the world order. This coalition is not just growing in size, but also in ambition, seeking to amplify the voices of emerging nations and challenge the dominance of Western institutions. The group's ongoing efforts to reform international financial institutions such as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank are viewed by Washington as a direct challenge to U.S. economic and political supremacy. These reforms aim to create a more balanced system where developing countries have a greater say in global decision-making. BRICS, along with organizations like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, are actively constructing a multipolar world order, one that emphasizes mutual cooperation, respect for national sovereignty, and the right of each nation to chart its own course. A key strategy in this transformation is the strengthening of trade and financial ties that operate outside the traditional US dollar system. By conducting more transactions in local currencies and establishing alternative payment networks, these nations are making themselves less vulnerable to American sanctions and external economic pressures. This movement is not just economic, it is also deeply ideological, creating a clear divide between Western-led models and those championed by the BRICS bloc. The world is witnessing a growing competition between these two visions for the future. For many developing nations, BRICS represents a genuine opportunity, a path to greater economic independence, technological advancement, and a break from systems historically dominated by Western powers. Through new partnerships, infrastructure projects, and investment, these countries are finding alternatives that better suit their unique needs. The pace of this shift is accelerating rapidly. New hubs of growth and innovation are emerging in cities across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, directly challenging the long-held dominance of the United States and its allies. As the global economic center of gravity steadily moves east and south, the world is being fundamentally reshaped. The dawn of a truly multipolar era is no longer a distant vision, it is unfolding before our eyes. With the July 9th deadline for new trade agreements looming, the global diplomatic scene is frantic. The Trump administration's hardline stance has turned negotiations into high-stakes contests against the clock. The few successes, deals with the UK, Vietnam, and a partial agreement with China, are overshadowed by unresolved talks, especially with the EU and Japan. The EU is struggling to balance economic imperatives with political sovereignty, negotiating under the threat of higher US tariffs. Nowhere is the pressure greater than in Japan, a key US ally caught in a bind. Japanese officials are locked in intense negotiations, seeking to protect their export-driven economy without appearing to capitulate. Behind the scenes, Japan is quietly exploring contingency plans, including deeper engagement with the BRICS framework. The stakes for global economic stability have never been higher. The American ultimatum has forced Japan to re-evaluate its post-war foreign policy. For decades, Japan's prosperity has been tied to its alliance with the US, but the current administration's transactional approach is straining this relationship. Japan is now considering alternatives, including closer economic integration with the BRICS bloc. Japanese businesses, reliant on global supply chains centered in Asia, feel a powerful pull toward BRICS economies. The internal debate is fierce. Traditionalists urge patience with the US alliance, while business leaders and nationalists push for greater autonomy. Japan must balance negotiations with Washington while signaling openness to BRICS. The mere consideration of a pivot marks a profound strategic shift. Trump's policies are reshaping the Indo-Pacific landscape. The tariff ultimatum strikes at the heart of the globalized economy. BRICS leaders warn that US protectionism could trigger a global trade war, shattering supply chains and risking recession. The world's reliance on Chinese supply chains makes decoupling slow and costly, with tariffs inevitably hurting American companies and consumers. Companies are scrambling to diversify manufacturing, but friendshoring and nearshoring require massive investments and introduce new risks. The just-in-time delivery system is under threat, promising higher prices and volatility. US allies like Japan and Germany, whose industries are deeply integrated with China, are caught in the crossfire. A US tariff on BRICS-aligned goods could disrupt essential components for exports to America. Trump's tariffs are a blunt instrument, with widespread and often unintended consequences. Seasoned observers warn of the long-term risks of America's strategy. Dr. Evelyn Reed, economist at the Council on Foreign Relations, argues that economic coercion may win short-term concessions but erodes trust and cooperation. Treating allies as competitors sends a message: the partnerships are conditional and unreliable. This creates a vacuum that powers like China and BRICS are eager to fill. The administration's tactics may accelerate the very trends it seeks to halt: de-dollarization, stronger regional blocs, and a multipolar world. The risk is American isolation as former allies build new networks without the US. By erecting walls, America could cut itself off from the world's most dynamic growth engines. The America First policy may paradoxically leave America behind. Trump's trade tactics are creating a deep rift between the US and its closest allies. Nations like Japan and the EU feel less like partners and more like hostages, forced to reconsider their strategic futures. The constant threat of economic punishment is fueling political instability and backlash within allied nations. This makes negotiations harder and weakens alliances America claims to value. The result is a fragmented world, with allies seeking greater autonomy and strengthening ties with other powers. The BRICS model, emphasizing partnership over dominance, is becoming more attractive. The more the US pushes, the more appealing the alternative becomes, fundamentally altering the global balance of power. We are witnessing a tectonic shift in the global order. Trump's aggressive tariff strategy, meant to reassert American dominance, may achieve the opposite. By targeting both friends and foes, the US is forcing the world to reorganize. The policy accelerates the rise of a multipolar world and strengthens BRICS as a viable alternative. Japan's dilemma is a microcosm of the global choice: submit to an unpredictable America or seek autonomy in a new framework. The long-term consequences for the US could be severe, risking isolation from the world's fastest-growing regions. The America First doctrine could leave America standing alone, a diminished giant. The choices made now will determine the shape of the 21st century, and the world will not be the same.